Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things fandom on this channel. This is Throwback Thursday and it's the last Throwback Thursday of the year. So we're going to be taking a look at Terror Train from 1980. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so on Terrifying Tuesday, we talked about 12 horror movies you could watch that would help you ring in the new year. And one of those movies was Terror Train 2 from 2022. Now, the thing about Terror Train 2 from 2022 is it was also a sequel to Terror Train from 2022, which was a remake of this movie that we're going to be talking about today. Now, I mentioned this movie in the video, but then I accidentally referred to it as the remake, but that was a lot of talking about sequels and remakes, and I think you guys understood where I was coming from. But in any case, the funny thing about doing that was that this video was always going to be our throwback movie review. So Terror Train from 1980 starts off in a northern Illinois university where some medical students are playing a prank on a fellow student. They are making him think that he's going to get romantic with Jamie Lee Curtis. This doesn't happen because they take one of the corpses from the medical lab and replace Jamie Lee Curtis with that. That's the prank. The kid goes insane because of this. Unable to deal with it, he is sent to a psychiatric ward. Then we flash forward to 3 years later. It is at this point when they are boarding this train 3 years later that we pick up. So they have decided to have a New Year's Eve party aboard a train. And some of the workers are more interesting to watch than some of the students. It is actually pretty funny to me just how much I enjoyed watching the background characters in this movie, because some of them are far more interesting to watch than even the main characters themselves. It's good that you can have a movie where even the people that you shouldn't be caring about slowly start to become the ones that you possibly care about the most. And I feel that there's a couple incidences in this movie where that's exactly what happens. You find yourself actually caring for some of the minor characters more than you do even the big characters in the movie. And that is something that isn't pulled off very well in other movies, but it works to this movie's advantage. But where exactly does the terror start in the movie? And here's where it goes. Basically, what happens is they go on this train to celebrate New Year's Eve. Unbeknownst to them, one of them is a killer. Could it be revenge for what happened 3 years ago? Well, this is unique because the killer, every time they kill somebody, they actually take the mask that that person is wearing. Now, the movie takes advantage of this in a lot of ways because we as the audience kind of always know which mask the killer is wearing, but to the party goers, they think it's their friend. And this makes it that much more suspenseful for us to watch as the audience. We find ourselves screaming at the screen, telling them not to go this way with that person because that's not the person they think it is. This movie works for that so well. It makes it one of the best slasher movies of the early 80s. And it is definitely why it is a classic. And although the remake takes place during Halloween, and then it has the sequel that takes place during New Year's Eve, this movie far outweighs those because you can never beat the original. And this original from 1980 stars Jamie Lee Curtis and legendary magician David Copperfield. Now we can talk about David Copperfield being in this movie all we want because his role is quite significant in this movie. He does a good job, I think, as the magician aboard this train and one of the potential possibilities as the killer. But what people don't talk about a whole lot is that Vanity is also in this movie. And if you don't know who Vanity is, Vanity was a singer that sang with Prince, among other things. She had a career as a movie star for a little while in a couple different movies that you might recognize if you are a fan of the 80s. So definitely she was something of an anomaly in this movie because this was probably the first time we saw her in a movie. At least I know for me, this was the first time I saw Vanity in a movie, and her part is just kind of this unnoticeable part. We just kind of gloss over her every time we see her. And the thing is that we shouldn't be glossing over her because I think looking back, her performance was just as good for what it was as everybody else in the movie. And this killer in this movie, taking these masks of each victim, will bring you the level of suspense that you would expect if you are watching a suspenseful movie. So even if you're not a fan of the slasher genre of movies, you might find something interesting about this movie because it does build up the suspense, but it also works as a slasher film with your typical slasher formula of the psycho chasing after people who all they want to do is party. And a lot of the characters aren't very likable. Because of that prank at the beginning, you may not even find yourself rooting for Jamie Lee Curtis. And I think that that's notable because if you're not even finding yourself rooting for her, then wow, how do you go forward in this movie? And I've actually heard people in the past say that this is the one movie where they hoped that the final girl got it in the end, that the final girl didn't survive. Now, whether she does or not, you're just going to have to watch the movie and find out. However, the thing of this is that this movie builds up suspense so well that it is worth a watch for just that reason alone. And then on top of that, being one of the better slasher films of the 80s, being it takes place right at the dawn of the 80s in 1980, it was hard to top. And I'm not saying there were other great slasher movies in the 80s, because the 80s were the dawn of the slasher movies. They were what the 80s were known for in terms of horror movies. Some of our greatest icons got their starts in the 80s. If you have never seen this movie, it is one that I highly recommend that you watch this New Year's Eve. You cannot go wrong with this movie. If you're a fan of slashers, then it's got something for you. If you're a fan of suspense, then it has that for you. No matter what it is you are looking for, this movie will kind of deliver that. The characters sometimes aren't really likable, but the acting from an early Jamie Lee Curtis and several of the other stars is in fact pretty okay. So if you've seen this movie, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And if you haven't, go ahead and watch it and let us know what you think. As always, we want to know what you guys think. So leave us a comment in the comment box below, letting us know what you think. Share this video with all of your friends so they can be a part of the conversation as well. Make sure you hit that like button. It helps the channel. We appreciate it. Miko says we need more subscribers. And you don't want to disappoint Miko. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell while you're down there so you don't miss a single video we do. And then friends, at the end of the day, I know it, you know it, and Miko knows that fandom is family.